We're really excited. Tonight is the night. We've been talking about it for a while. Back to the Future at the fabulous Fox Theater starts this evening. And what an honor it is to have the writer, the producer of Back to the Future, the first 3 films, and the musical that's going to be on the stage at the fabulous Fox with us, Bob Gale. How you doing, Bob?
Hey,
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Courtney. Thank you,
That was
Brenda.
a weak applause. Hold on. Bob Gale. Yeah!
I didn't have my microphone on. That was
Feels better.
Thank you for being in here with us this morning.
Happy to be here.
Now, is it going to be cool for you to see it at the Fox Theater?
Well, yeah, because I went to the movies at the Fox Theater. That's how old I am.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Didn't even know they did that.
Yeah, it was a movie theater, and, Powell Hall was a movie theater, too. It was called the St. Louis Theater.
I did not.
Well, you got to talk to these old St. Louis veterans that grew up here. Yeah, I went to University City High School, and some new first-run movie would come out, and my friends and I, we'd get on the Delmar bus, and we'd come down to Grand Avenue and go to the movies.
Man, that's a fancy theater to see movies
No
in.
kidding. What'd you
Well,
see?
it's fancier now than it was then because they, refurbished it and so forth. But it had been around forever, and they had a guy named Stan Can who played the organ.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
they probably have inside of there, a display case about Stan
Probably
Can.
his vacuum cleaners are in there.
So he would, between shows, the organ would rise up, and he'd be there playing just kind of like at the ballpark, right?
Wow.
And they would advertise, such and such a movie, John Wayne, Sons of Katie Elder, with Stan Can on the organ.
That's pretty cool. Well, let's talk about Back to the Future. It took a long, long time to have this movie made.
It did. It did. The story was born in St. Louis, actually. I was visiting my parents in University City. My dad had gone to U City High School just like I did. And I found his high school yearbook in the basement, which I'd never seen. And I saw that my dad had been the president of his graduating class. Now, I was not friends with my class president. I would have nothing to do with that guy. And I thought to myself, gee, was that the kind of guy my dad was? Was he one of these rah-rah school spirit social guys that I couldn't stand? I said, if I'd gone to high school with my dad, would I have been friends with him? Boom! Bolt of lightning. That's a movie. That's a movie.
Wow.
What if you could go to high school with your dad? And so I thought, okay. Bob Zemeckis and I have been kicking around the idea of a time travel movie for years and never came up with anything interesting that hadn't been done before. And then I said, this is it. This is going to make it work. And so I told him the idea, and he said, oh, yeah, what if your mom went to the same high school and all the stuff she said she never did, she did?
What if she hit on you at some point?
Yeah, exactly. So that got it started. And interestingly, it was the easiest pitch meeting we had ever made. We'd just finished a picture at Columbia Pictures called Used Cars.
Oh, yeah, Kurt Russell.
Very good. Yeah, I recommend it to everybody over the age of 15 because it is R-rated for language. But it's really funny. And the president of Columbia Pictures, Frank Price, became a good friend. And he had said to us, when you guys come up with your next idea, I want to hear it first. So we called up Frank. We said, Frank, we want to pitch you an idea. He said, great. Came in. It was the shortest pitch meeting. He got it in like 45 seconds. And Bob Zemeckis wanted to keep telling him more scenes. And I said, shut up. He gets it. He's going to give us a deal. So we got hired right away to write it, 2 drafts. But then they decided they didn't want to make it because this is when movies like Porky's and Stripes were coming out.
Trust me, I was a teen in those days, and
Okay.
those were all the movies that we had.
So they say, it's a very nice, sweet movie, but it's not really what's being marketed right now. So they give it back to us, and it's called Turnaround. Turnaround is when the studio or the production company gives the writer or the director or the producer the project back to set up someplace else with the understanding that if they do that, the new company that buys it repays the first company the money that they already spent.
Okay.
So it's win-win, because nobody wants to see the movie made more than the people that created it, and the other company just wants to get their money back. So it's all good. So we took this thing around Hollywood, every studio, every production company, and everybody turned it down for one of two reasons. One was it's too nice, it's too sweet, take it to Disney. And the other one was, well, time travel movies don't make any money, which at that time, that was a true statement. They didn't. So finally, after being exasperated by all these no's, and at the end of the day, there were about 42 of them, 42 rejections.
Wow.
We go into Disney. Well, maybe they're right. Maybe we should be in business with Disney. This is the old Disney, the Disney that gave us classics like The Black Hole, right? So we walk in this guy's office, and he looks at us, and he kind of stands up at his desk. He says, "Are you guys out of your minds? You've given us a movie about incest. You've got the kid and his mom in the car. We are Disney. We don't do things."
Oh, yeah,
like
they just kill the parents all the time at the beginning of the movies.
Right. So, okay. Our instincts were correct. Disney was not the right home for this. Zemeckis goes off and he makes Romancing the Stone.
Oh, man.
It's a
such
big
good
hit.
one.
Everybody and his uncle wants to be in business with Bob Zemeckis. They say, "Bob, what movie do you want to make?" He says, "I want to make Back to the Future." And we took it back to our friend Steven Spielberg, who would always like the script. And he would just set up Amblin Entertainment. And it was the very first Amblin Entertainment movie that we set up in 1984.
Really?
Yes.
And your lead had changed, too.
Oh, yeah. I need a sip of coffee.
Okay.
Hold on to your hats, folks.
Big one.
So we always wanted Michael J. Fox. He was on Family Ties, big hit show. And if anybody has not seen the documentary Still, which is on Apple, all about Michael J. Fox, it's well worth an hour and a half of your life to see this, because it lays a lot of this stuff out. So Michael's a gigantic TV star, and he's perfect. We know he's perfect.
Has he done film
No.
up to this point? Okay, because I couldn't remember if Teen Wolf came
Teen
out.
Wolf, he shot Teen Wolf
Okay.
ahead of Back to the Future, but they held it back. Once they found out he got into Back to the Future, they said,
Oh, let's make
Yeah.
this bigger because
right.
this is going to be great.
Right. But so he went to the producer Family Ties and he said, "Guys, this is a great script. It's so great. I don't even want Michael to see it, because if he sees it, he will hate me for telling him he cannot do it. We need him on this show because his TV mom, Meredith Baxter Burney, is pregnant and she's carrying the show. And I mean, he's carrying the show." So we understood. We pushed our start date back twice, I think, trying to find the right guy. And finally, the head of MCA Universal, he was really bullish on an actor named Eric Stoltz, who had just finished a movie there called Mask, where he
played
plays this
Rocky
kid,
Dennis.
Yeah, with this deformity. That's a good picture.
Yeah, but he wasn't shown.
Right. You just see him acting
Behind the makeup.
behind this gigantic fake head thing. But Scheinberg was of the opinion that if he could give a performance with all those prosthetics, he can do anything. And we screen tested him, and we weren't quite as impressed with him as Scheinberg was. We were leaning towards an actor named C. Thomas Howell, who went on to do Outsiders and a bunch of other movies. Good solid
The Hitcher.
actor. He would have done fine. Yeah. And Scheinberg didn't like him, and he said, "I am so sure that Eric Stoltz is going to be great, that if he doesn't work out, you can start the movie again with somebody else." Now, nobody does that, right? Nobody says that, but nobody ever does that. But, okay, all right. That, as they say, was an offer we couldn't refuse. So we put Eric in the movie, and he wasn't giving us the comedy that we wanted. And after 5 weeks, Bob Zemeckis had edited enough of the picture together, about 35, 40 minutes, where he showed it to me, and then he showed it to Steven Spielberg and Frank Marshall, Kathy Kennedy, our other producers, and we all agreed this is not the perfect Marty McFly on any level. We need to push the red button here. Steven, in his wisdom, said to us, "Look, you can't go to Sid and say we want to shut down and start a new casting process, because if you shut the show down, you may not get it started up again. Get your replacement lined up first." So we went back to the producer family ties, Gary Goldberg. I think we literally got on our knees in his office. And he said, "Okay, Meredith is back on the show. Michael isn't doing the same load of work that he's doing, but we still need him to finish the season. So if you guys agree to shoot around our schedule and work with Michael at night while we work with him in the day, and Michael is okay with that, the answer is yes." So, look, we just said yes if you said cut off your left elbow, your arm, Yeah, okay, yeah, all right, yeah, we'll do that.
And so he was.
So Michael said, "I'm 22 years old. What do I need to sleep for?"
And man, what a great role for him.
It was perfect.
Put him on the map.
It put him beyond the map.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like there's
the chemistry between him and Christopher
There's a
Lloyd.
story that he tells. He was traveling in somewhere in India or Southeast Asia in the jungles somewhere, and he's walking through with his group, and he hears this voice with a foreign accent. "Hey, McFly!"
Really? Wow.
So it got everywhere. It got everywhere.
That is so cool. Was it always, since you had to wait for so long, was it always a DeLorean?
No, it was not. In the original first two drafts, it was a refrigerator.
Oh, it was.
It was
How
a
did it get up to
refrigerator.
88 miles an hour?
Well, it didn't have to go 88 miles an hour. It needed nuclear power from a nuclear test site. So the climax of the movie was Doc taking the time machine on the back of a pickup truck out to a Nevada nuclear test site, and the time machine had this dish on top of it that was going to absorb.
And they knew when the test was going to
Yeah.
be. Ah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's not the clock tower.
Yeah, so
The clock tower.
the clock tower turned out to
Yeah.
be better. This
Yeah.
was a very expensive sequence.
Yeah.
And we end up, the budget came in, and the studio said, cut $1 million out of the budget. It was the only way we cut $1 million was to not go on location. So Bob and I said, okay, we'll cut that and let's figure something else out. What do we have at our disposal already that isn't going to cost anything? We had the back lot at Universal. So we come up with the clock tower scene, which is way better. And it just goes to show that sometimes having limits on what you can do can make you more creative. Meanwhile, Stephen kind of filed away the idea of the refrigerator at a nuclear test site, and that's the opening of Indiana Jones Part 4. Remember? Harrison Ford goes to this nuclear test site, and he hides in a lead-lined refrigerator.
Oh, my gosh.
I've never seen 4.
I have. I do remember that at the very beginning.
Which one?
It's not a movie you have to see.
I'm not going to act like I've seen
Stephen.
it.
If they show it at the Fox, I'll go and watch it.
Spielberg listens to our show quite a bit. So he's gonna-
So anyway, the movie's so successful that Universal obviously wants a sequel, and we gave them 2 sequels.
Yeah.
But then we said, that's it. We're going to put the end at the end of Part 3 because we feel like we have told the story that we want to tell. We don't have any further place to go with these characters. And people would always come and say, hey, when are you guys going to do Back to the Future Part 4? And we'd say, over our dead bodies, literally, because they couldn't make Part 4 without us. Michael develops Parkinson's disease, and then it's like, okay, do you want to see a Back to the Future movie without Michael J. Fox? No.
No.
People don't want to see that. And you understand why he can't do one, right? And they go, yeah. So they got it. But we thought, inspired by Bob Zemeckis' wife, Leslie, they had seen The Producers on Broadway, which was one of the best musical from a movie adaptations ever done. And she said, Bob, have you and Bob ever thought about doing Back to the Future as a theatrical musical? And Bob said, that's an interesting idea. I'm going to kick that around with Bob Gale when I get back to L.A. And so we kicked it around, and we thought, okay, when people say they want Back to the Future Part 4, what they are really saying is, I want to feel as good as I felt the first time I saw Back to the Future. And that was our goal with the musical. Let's give people a true Back to the Future experience. So we hired Alan Silvestri, who wrote this who wrote the music for the movie. Glenn Ballard, very accomplished songwriter, who had just written some songs for Bob Zemeckis on Polar Express. We sat down with those guys. They said, "Yeah, this is a great idea. Let's start cooking." They wrote a couple of songs just to give us the flavor of what they were thinking. They hit the ball out of the park, and so this was in 2006 in earnest when we really said, "Okay, we can do this. We can do this." So we then went around pitching the idea, and we would meet with these producers and say, "Well, maybe you could make a musical out of Back to the Future, but what makes you think you guys could do it?" And you've never done a musical before. So, well, no, we've never done a musical before, but we have done 3 Back to the Future movies that grossed almost $1 billion. We might know something about Back to the Future. But they'd say, no, you're not in the club. You don't have any Broadway credibility. And this is the message that we got from Broadway producers constantly. Maybe this would make a show, but we can't let you guys do it. And finally, we met a British producer named Colin Ingram, and this was the big difference. Colin saw the movie when he was a teenager, just like you. And he was a huge fan. So his attitude was, I get to make a musical based on Back to the Future, and the guys that made the movie are going to do it? Duh!
Oh, that's cool. I have goosebumps. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So we started it in the UK because he's British, and in the UK we knew we had a huge built-in fan base because if you're of a certain age and in the United States, you know that the day after Thanksgiving, one of the TV networks always ran The Wizard of Oz, and your parents would sit you down in front of the TV and say, kids, you got to see this classic movie, Wizard of Oz. In the UK, on Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, they ran Back to the Future on TV. So parents would sit their kids down and say, kids,
No kidding.
you got to see
That's
this.
fascinating.
So we had this huge, everybody in the country knew the
It's
knew
their
the movie.
classic.
Yeah, it's
Day
their
after
classic.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So I knew based on that we had an audience already that they were going to line up around the block. And again, it wouldn't be Back to the Future if we didn't have some major glitch, which was COVID, because we opened the show in Manchester. We had 21, I think, previews, 5 performances, and then COVID shut down the world. So we had to shut down our show, and 16 months later, we got it back up and running in London. It's been still running there. We just started our 4th year. Then we got it up and running on Broadway a year ago, July, and still running there, and successful enough to say, okay, let's take this sucker on tour.
Yeah, so tonight is the opening night for Back to the Future, the musical. And from what I've heard from anybody that's seen it on Broadway or elsewhere, they said, somebody in our office actually said, it's just one of those things you have to see, and spectacle is used a lot.
Spectacle.
It is
Like, he's like, I
spectacle.
don't even know how they are doing it.
Well, that was our goal, to say we need to raise the bar on theatrical special effects, which we do. And we give you that Back to the Future experience. And one of the reasons it's so good, at the risk of blowing my own horn, is Bob Zemeckis and I always had the red button. So if we saw that the show was going off the rails, we could just push the red button and say, we're not doing this anymore. So, and there was one time when we got close to that, but we didn't, and we powered through what our problems were. And the joy was that everybody that worked on the show was a fan of the movie. So they came to it with the approach that I'm not going to be the one to screw this up. This movie's too good. This has got to be the best work I've ever done. And so it's pretty damn good.
That's awesome. Well, get tickets. It opens tonight. You have I know that you have more interviews to do in this building. Bob, Gale. There's so many more things I want to ask you about, but sadly we don't have the time. But there's Easter eggs in the movie. There's a really good article in St. Louis Magazine that they did with you because you did that Q&A. But there's a lot of interesting history with Back to the Future. But it's going to hit the stage tonight. Fabulous Fox Theater, fabulousfox.com is where you can get your tickets.
And take your kids, even if they haven't seen the movie. The show is designed, whether you've seen the movie or not, it works.
Tonight through October 6th at the Fox Theater.